Welcome to a new episode of Driver Stories. In honor of LGT's 10th anniversary, we decided to go back to our roots and talk to some of LGT's first employees. Today's special guest is Debbie Stengel, LGT's billing manager. She joined LGT when it was a small company operating out of my home. Debbie remains a dedicated member of our team, managing our billing department and office while consistently going above and beyond to make our staff and drivers feel appreciated. We're excited about this conversation, so let's get started. Well, welcome everybody. So I thought since this is our 10-year anniversary, we'd spend a little time going back to our roots and visiting with some of the people who have been here for a long time. And the first person who came to my mind is Miss Young at heart, Debbie Stengel.
Hello. It's been a while, 10 years now, huh?
It's been a wild 10 years. It has been a wild 10 years. So Debbie, this is not new to Debbie. Debbie has a degree in broadcasting.
Broadcast sales management.
Yes. So not only are we going back to the roots of LGT, we're going back to the roots of Debbie. So for those of you who don't know, we started LGT in 2011 was actually when we got incorporated. But we had to wait a little bit of time because we were waiting on insurance and we were waiting on trailers. And so it wasn't until 2012 when we actually started business. And before I get into the very first day, I want to talk about the first time I met Debbie. So for those of you who don't know, when I first got started, it was my dad that was actually the one that was backing the business and helping me get started. And I guess he was our number one champion, right?
He was such a fan of Pam and a fan of LGT. He was so proud of his daughter, yes.
Yeah.
I thought she was the only daughter for the longest time because that's all he talked about. It was so cute and sweet. And he had all of his grandkids up on the wall, and Pam, he loved Pam. He was very proud of her.
Yeah. So you met my dad at Hy-Vee.
I did.
So do you remember the first time you met him? Sort of an odd duck, wasn't he?
It's really funny because I was working at Hy-Vee at the time so that I could spend more time with my kids. And so I was working there. I was probably still working 32 hours a week. But I worked in the health and beauty section, and I was stocking shelves, and I was cashier, and I was customer service, and I was camera video, and I worked all these different departments. But I would always run into Gerald and Marjorie. They would come around the corner by the health and beauty. There was a pharmacy area there and the wine section, and they would come around the corner, and I always visited with them constantly. They were just the cutest couple, and I would give them a hug every time I'd see them, and I'd usually get in trouble for talking too long with this customer, but I just fell in love with this couple. And I was to the point where I needed full-time hours and I wanted benefits, and so I was leaving Hy-Vee. And at that point, Gerald came up to me and he goes, "Debbie, do you know anybody who would be willing to help Marjorie and I out?" And I was really sad I was going to miss seeing this guy because I was leaving Hy-Vee. So I said, "Oh, my daughter and I would love to help you out." And so this relationship of my daughter and I going to Gerald and Marjorie's house one Saturday a month, and he had a good-sized house. And he only wanted it cleaned once a month, but we always had to visit before we could clean, which definitely made us clean a lot faster because we couldn't get everything done because by noon he was ready for us to go, right? And we're like, okay, so we barely got the basement vacuumed, but he's ready for us to go, so I guess we're done. So we would try to focus on different things each week, but we always visited for at least a good hour before we cleaned. And I didn't really have grandparents, so I really loved that aspect. I loved visiting with him and hearing his take on things.
Yeah.
Well, so that's how I met Pam.
Well, he definitely loved you, right? Loved having Debbie come over, loved having her daughter come over. And so when I started LGT, it was just me and Harold. It was the two of us. Harold was driving and I was doing everything else in the office. And my dad says to me one day, he says, well, you should hire Debbie.
Who's Debbie?
And that's
Who the
what I
heck
said.
is Debbie?
Who is Debbie? And he says, well, you got to meet her. Right? Mm-hmm. So one day I went over to my dad's house, and you were there. It was a Saturday, I think, that you were.
Probably a Saturday morning, yeah.
Saturday morning. And that's the first time that I met Debbie. And we talked for a little bit. We talked about, the company. And I said, well, are you interested in working out of my home? And, and you said yes. You remember that?
Yes, I cried.
Yeah, you cried. I didn't want to bring that up.
I was so excited because, here's this guy I've been talking to how long that I really respected, who loved his daughter and had her up on this pedestal. And here I was talking to her, and I knew that you had this fancy career at the city, and she was offering me an opportunity to be part of something big, and I was just so excited. I cried. I think I cried the rest of the weekend, actually. And now I cry because I'm still here. No, just kidding,
Oh, that's funny. It wasn't big then, though. It was small.
Yeah, but it was exciting.
Yeah, but I can't remember the first day that you came over, but I remember, so when we first got started, I lived in Stony Brook, and I had this tri-level. So when you walked into the house, it went a little up, and then it went straight back, and there was this kind of family room.
Yes,
and
fireplace.
So I had put this humongous desk that I'd gotten at a Goodwill store, and it was humongous in there. And when Debbie said that she was going to come work, then I had to figure out, well, how am I going to get desk number 2 in there? So we put a desk
right in front of the window.
Right in front of the window.
I mean, it was a perfect work at home, even though it wasn't my home. It was somebody's home. And it was awesome because they had these big trees with squirrels, and Rudy, her dog, would just growl at these squirrels, and it was just so humorous because, you never see that in a work environment.
Well, not only did I have a dog, I also had a cat.
Yes, Mystic was the best.
We had Mystic. And so Debbie was doing learning how to do the billing.
Yes.
And we could talk about that a little bit. But one of the things I remember the most was every time that Debbie got up to use the restroom or go into the kitchen or whatever it is.
Use the copier.
Yeah, we had a copier.
We had 2 pieces of equipment, a fax machine and a copier.
Yeah. She had to run because the cat wanted the chair.
And every time, as soon as I stood up, Mystic was up on my chair. So I would kind of scoot over because I like cats, and and then Mystic would get in trouble, and then he'd get sent to the basement. Or sometimes he had to lay on the papers, you know what I mean? Because that's a cat, right?
Yeah.
You can't pet him if they're not right in front of you. But you really do need 2 hands to type it in order.
Yeah. So not only did we have a dog and a cat there, and we had the kids. I think Josh was still in high school. Yep. And
Christian was in the basement because he was going to UNO.
Yep. And Brittany was gone.
And I didn't know Brittany very well.
Yeah.
I just had seen Brittany in pictures.
Yeah.
Now she works here too.
So when we first started, do you remember the spreadsheets?
Yes. I do, because I had not done anything like that before.
Yeah.
And it's not that I had done advertising sales. And so I had learned a little bit in Excel, but it was very limited, as you know. Mm-hmm. And it was a little intimidating, but I thought, if Gerald can do this, I sure can do this. That was the only thing going on. If the 80-year-old could do this, I could do this.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that.
We need to talk about that.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. But when we first started, every load would go on a spreadsheet. Every load. And then you'd type in everything, and you'd copy paste to the next tab, and that would be another invoice.
It was 20 per sheet.
20 per sheet. That's right. And we had Harold first, and then after him came Sean Kleinert, and then after him was Ron Cryer, Larry Aubert, and 105 was Sean McCulloch. Those were the first years that we had. And when we first started, it wasn't even cryogenic loads, but it was, we were doing mostly work for Praxair.
Mm-hmm.
And
And a little bit for air gas when I started.
yeah,
1 or 2 loads for air gas.
yeah. So we would print the Excel sheet. We get their paperwork in on a fax machine, and we put the two together. We'd scan them, and we'd put them on a shared drive, and then we'd email them to the customer.
And at that point, I wasn't doing that yet. You were still sending out the invoices. I was just entering.
Yeah.
In fact, all the trips were coming in by fax, so you had to scan in each trip after you entered it, like you said.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It was. It was. And I can't remember at what point we decided we needed more space, an actual office.
Well, it wasn't too much later because I started in September and we moved into that new place in January or February.
Okay. And you did all that. I think everybody should know Debbie did all that. Because when we first looked at an office space, it was empty. It wasn't finished.
It wasn't built or anything, no.
Yeah, it was empty.
We looked at floors and paint colors, and remember going for a rug and then your dad didn't like the rug? I thought it was beautiful. But it was funny because it was so empty, because it was Pam in her office then and me sitting in the office next to you, and we felt like we had this huge space and it was never going to be filled, right? And now we're in this a whole nother office that's twice as big,
Yeah, that's true, because when we built that out, it was just a little square office in the strip mall. That's where we ended up.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a nice office. I loved it.
It was a nice office. Yeah, it was, and you picked great colors. But the refrigerator was in the closet.
That was the only place we could put it. There was no choice.
And there was only one bathroom.
And that was in the middle of the place.
Yes.
And as we grew, you learned who used the bathroom at what times and when you needed to go before they went to the bathroom.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't know if you knew that, Pam, but there was a definite, okay, ooh, it's 10:20. I better get to the bathroom now before somebody else gets in there.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But we started with used desks, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I remember picking out and getting all those desks.
Yes. And then did we go downtown? I think we
went
to
everywhere.
It was one
was
of
it all
those
makes?
warehouses. No, it was a warehouse. And remember, the guy had an entire warehouse filled
just
with
a desk and chairs.
And we tried to get matching chairs.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we didn't do too bad.
No, I thought we did pretty good, actually.
Yeah. I loved the desks, actually. They were really nice. So then my dad shows up. Do you remember that? We got him a desk.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to work part-time. He didn't want to work full-time.
Debbie.
Yeah. And if you didn't know my dad was not technologically savvy. He could turn it on. He could, do a few things, but Excel.
Well, she's looking at me while she says that, and I know how she feels about that, so I'm just going to look at her.
So, of course, in the middle of the morning, always, because he only worked in the mornings,
mm-hmm.
You would hear this, Debbie. And you knew he had a question.
Right.
So she'd go out there patient as all get out. And she was just a champ, really a champ.
It was really cute, though, because he would get, some people had 2 first names. Mm-hmm. And so then he couldn't find the name because he was looking up their first name when that was their last name. You know what I mean? He couldn't, and yeah, so those were some of the struggles, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Thinking back, it was kind of...
He really liked it.
He loved being involved with it.
Yeah, he did. He did. So then one office filled and another office filled. Can't remember who came next. I think it might have been Brian.
Yep, it was Brian.
Mm-hmm. As the safety.
And then we had...
Wendy, right?
No, I think we had Teresa. No, oh wait, it was Wendy because she was in that other corner office.
In the other corner office. We had a conference room at the beginning. In the conference room there was it was really a nice conference room. You could come in and sit down, and then we ran out of space, and so then we had to take the conference room away and we put 3 cubicles in there.
Right.
Remember? 3 cubicles?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we ran out of space again, so we put some more cubicles in the middle. That's when Glenn came. Remember Glenn? We
Yes.
put Glenn in the middle.
We had Glenn in the middle. Which, if I could have things back, it was really nice. I mean, it was such a small office. I mean, you could look at everybody. You didn't have to look at the phone to see if they were on the phone. You just looked over and said, oh, they're on the phone. Or if you had a question, you could just say, hey, what's going on? Or, you heard everybody's conversation. So it was our way of kind of communicating with everybody, because Glenn was loud, and so you could not hear Glenn, right? And so if he said, oh, so you're not going to make it to the delivery, well, in the billing, I would go, oh, I'd write, make a note down. Or if I heard you talking to somebody, because we were so close, and then we moved to this building, and it was like, oh my God, operations is on the other side of the building. I don't know what's going on anymore, And not that you didn't get an email, but it just wasn't as immediate. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But then we hired more people.
Well, I know, but by the time we left there, you and I were sharing an office, right?
Yes.
And then
Wendy and Kathy.
4,
5.
3
6,
were in the front
7,
room.
8, 9, 10. We have 12. We had 12 or 13 people in that small little office.
Yeah. We were probably outside the fire code, I'm sure we were.
Yeah, and we didn't have a conference room, so we just all stood in the middle section when we'd have a meeting, because that was
we did that.
quite interesting.
Yeah.
And, when we had these beautiful little white chairs when we first started building, and we had this rug and little entryway in the conference room, and then that all went out until it was like desk, coffee pot.
Yeah, where was the coffee pot? It was on the side.
Well, we ended up moving it to the front.
That's right.
Right by where
front.
you walked in, because it was in the conference room, but the refrigerator was in the closet still.
So then we made it big time. We got a building.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, Debbie designed this.
I did not design it all by myself.
You picked the colors, and it turned out beautifully.
Yeah. I remember you guys picked out the carpet, though. I wasn't sure how I felt about and I love it now.
I do too.
It wears well. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So now you're the billing manager after all of that time, and you have 3 people full-time working for you, and you have after-hours people that do billing.
2 part-timers.
2 part-timers.
3 part-timers.
And it's different.
It is different.
Yeah. So what do you like about it now and versus then, or vice versa? What do you miss the most from the beginning?
I don't know if I would say I miss anything. I think I'm most grateful that I was able to start at the beginning and look at it and build upon each. As the company grew, you were able to layer your information, and the people who come on board now have all this information they have to absorb immediately.
Right.
And even though we try to stagger that in the training, I'm very grateful that I was able to build up on that and layer the different pieces, because we've changed so much. We didn't have teams, and it was just liquid nitrogen and LOX and CO2, and then we started adding all these other products, and it it just keeps building. But I like it because I'm always challenged by it. I mean, there's always something new to learn. There's some things that still get past me, but
I think a lot of people don't know certain things about Debbie, so I'm going to take a few minutes. So what I find, what surprised me the most, right, was, and I don't know at what point I learned this, but Debbie sends out all the settlements. Every week she sends out the settlements to the drivers. And I just thought they were going out. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, you send an email, create an email with an address, you send your settlement, you're done, right? But not Debbie. Debbie sends weekly love notes, and I call them love notes because they really are love notes, right? And they're that personal touch that she started, I don't know, was it at the beginning?
I did. I started that at the beginning. Well, towards the beginning. I mean, I've been doing it a very long time.
Right. So every week she sends a little personal note with the settlements to the drivers. And I don't know what it is. Some days it's Happy Father's Day. Some day it's Driver Appreciation Day. Sometimes it's Easter. Sometimes it's just a little joke.
Yeah.
But it's just that little thing that she does that's unique. And I don't know if everybody knows that. I don't know if people read their settlements. But I think they'd be severely disappointed if they didn't have Debbie's little notes, love notes.
They do. Sometimes I think this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? Why am I putting so much thought behind what is my message going to be today on Settlement Thursday? And if I just send out a happy payday, thank you for your work, I always get emails that say, really disappointed there was no comment in there. Where was the joke? Is that all the better you could do? And so, I know a lot of people have told me how much they appreciate it. And I'm not as sentimental as I used to be about it, because I used to just really make it a little personal thing. Because you talk to them on the phone all the time, but you don't get to always know them. Mm-hmm. And then they know things about you and you know things about them. And so over the years, it's actually been something that's very endearing to me that I do love about that. I mean, that's my thing. I like to do that. And now so many people respond back, or even the accountants that I send to for taxes will say, oh, that's a good one. You know what I mean? And so sometimes I wonder, what do they think? Oh my God, what does this lady do? But I enjoy doing it. I mean, it's a chance for them to get to know me and realize I'm not. I think I started doing it because I realized so many drivers had a really negative relationship with billing managers and other jobs that they worked for. And felt like the billing manager was trying to take advantage of their money or their miles, and I didn't want to be seen that way, because I knew you weren't that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew you had their back, and it was easy to say, oh, that was an error on my part, I'm sorry, I'll get that fixed. And some of the drivers play with that, and they like to give me a hard time, but if I said I'm sorry and I made it wrong, they know I'll make it right, or they know Pam will make it right. And if I can't fix it, then I go to Pam, and then Pam says, well, this is why it can't be fixed, or whatever it is. And that was one of the things I loved about LGT, was I knew Pam always had my back.
Well, some other things, though, that Debbie does, right? She sends flowers, right? If somebody has a birth or a death in their family, she's always the one that sends the flowers. She's the one that sends the cards. She does the invitations for the Christmas parties. I mean, all those little personal touches is all Debbie. And I don't think everybody knows that. And the other thing about Debbie is she's a lot of fun, right? And so she's always... So this year, one of the things that we did at the Omaha Christmas party is we had a magician.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun. But only Debbie would think about things like that. And so it's one of the things that I really, truly appreciate about you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I always work on the personal touch, because when Pam hired me, I don't know if you remember what you told me.
I don't.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Never worked for a trucking company. Knew her dad loved her dearly, and that everybody loved working for her. And she goes, Debbie, I just want you to treat the drivers the way you treat my dad.
Oh. Wow, that's kind of prophetic, isn't it?
And I really took that to heart. You know what I mean? Because I would make him banana bread, and I just really cared about him. And I was like, oh, there's only 5 drivers. I can do this, right? And now there's, 200? And it's harder to find a personal touch. So, the settlements and those kind of things. No, you always have to remember how you make people feel. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Do unto others, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's good to know. I'm glad to know Pam appreciates all of that. Every 10 years you hear a thank you, and I just think that's really nice.
I'm really good at positive reinforcement.
This will be my last podcast.
So one of the other things that Debbie does is she does invoicing. And I thought we'd take just a few minutes to talk about that. And the reason why I want to talk about that is what I wish more than anything else, and we've done this a couple of times with some of the customers, is I wish we could exchange roles, right? So it'd be nice that if you could go out and drive a truck, and it'd be nice if one of our drivers could come in and do billing. Because when each person switches roles, right, that's the beauty for me, right? I know all roles except for driving. Just so everybody knows, I don't have my CDL. But when you can switch roles, you get a greater appreciation for what happens with the other person. And And one of the things that we haven't done well at LGT is we haven't kept up with technology. We've been growing at such a fast clip that we haven't been able to keep our systems in place. So billing is very manually intensive at LGT. Hopefully it won't be that way forever, but today it is. So some of the things that come up, right, is questions about miles. Let's talk about miles, right? Drivers call you and they ask you about miles. What do you say to that? Why didn't I get paid these miles? What advice could you give them? That's a loaded question. But.
That is a loaded question. The first thing I think of was, did I already know this and was supposed to pay their miles and I missed it? But every driver, you didn't pay my miles and this is what's going on, and I will usually apologize and say I didn't realize that was the situation. But in most cases, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why are your miles not matching what we're having on PC Miler, whether it's 20 miles off or 50 miles off? And, in my mind, I don't even see this road that they're on, let alone the state they're in and the environment that they're driving in, whether it's mountains or hills or trees or whatever. And I always find it interesting when they say, well, there's this road and it has to go around this mountain and it's all broke up and it's not safe. And I can be really empathetic towards that. I probably wouldn't want to drive my car on that road, let alone a huge truck. I wish I could just say, just put down your miles and we'll do what we can. So we've tried to make rules to make it a little bit easier. But, when the drivers call, I do try to find out what's going on. Hey, can you reach out to the manager? Can we get it approved? Because if it's only one driver, it's one thing. But if you have 5 drivers doing it, you got to pay them all the same, because when they're looking at their invoices, they're seeing 5 drivers driving the same location. You got to have the same miles or a reason as to why, in this particular case, the road was closed due to an accident. It's just always communicating. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's probably the biggest aspect in all areas of growth is communicating. And, you figure out which drivers mean this and which drivers mean that. And
is that the biggest question you get every week, is miles?
No, miles is probably the biggest, though. I mean, we get all kinds of different calls on how to fill out paperwork and how to cover this and how to cover that. The paperwork changed, and I never mind going over the paperwork with them, because if they drive for some other customer, the way that customer wants to do business is going to change. I know what the paperwork entails as far as air products. They have a trip number. If they get a different trip number, now it becomes that trip number, not the old one. But sometimes the customer closes that out, so I'm always wanting to know that, Mm-hmm. So, but the miles is difficult. I can't see the road in my mind, and I don't know what they're experiencing. And because it is such a manual intensive, you're going through this going, okay, how many miles is it? And here it comes up and it's 20 miles off, and you're like, yay, I'm only 20 miles off. And then the customer calls and says, you didn't pay me my 20 miles and I was out of route, But I think drivers do know that we're sincere in saying, well, we want to figure out what we really need to pay you. We want it to be fair if you're putting the miles on there.
Mm-hmm. So do you know how many invoices you enter in a week?
I know I've entered about 145 to date. So far. Yeah, and I have on Mondays and Tuesdays I have my goals, just because I know that those are our busiest billing days, and I have a certain goal. If I know that tomorrow's not going to be a good day if I don't get this many sent out today, and the rest of the week I just keep up with it. But I know if I can't get over 200 done on a Monday, or 250 done on a Monday, that and I can do more now that Ashley's billing on the weekends. I can come in and print invoices off first thing in the morning. I don't have to wait till anybody to bill anything. It's ready to go. So then it just matters on interruptions and how many UPS deliveries we get, how many interviews we have going on. God forbid we run out of coffee. Things like that can really affect the day.
So talk about handwriting. I bet you everybody like to hear about handwriting.
You know what? There's a few drivers that win awards for great handwriting, and I'm not going to say their names, but if everybody could have fabulous handwriting, it would make our jobs go so much smoother. is that a 9? Is it a 4? Is that a 5? Is it a 2? What is that?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how some of them really have horrible handwriting. And I know they're just busy, right? They're loading their truck or loading their trailer, so they're filling out their paperwork and and I get that, but after a while you learn their chicken scratch and you figure out.
You do, actually.
I know how to learn.
Yeah.
I know how to read this guy, and I know what to look for with this guy, and
yeah.
So, but handwriting sure makes a big difference.
It does. It makes it so much easier and faster and accurate.
Oh yes, the accuracy. And that's what I'm telling drivers. We're not calling you because we're being picky. We just want to pay you right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny though, handwriting.
Handwriting. Yeah, handwriting is always important, and sometimes those images are, they're just not legible. They come in blurry, or I was looking at one today where I don't know why it seems like it just cuts off a piece of it.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah, and I don't know.
And I don't know if
why it
they
does
have
that.
a band across their, if they have a portfolio with a band that goes across the middle to hold everything flat and it cuts it off. But yeah, that's usually where it cuts it off, and you're like, okay, I can't read the first delivery. But we almost have everybody using drive axle now. There's only 1 or 2 drivers that still fax.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a big difference too. I mean, it's just little not like that.
Right. I think also most people don't know that when the trips come in, right, through drive axle, we send them out not just once, but like customers, they want to be able to close their trips within 24 hours. So the first thing that we do is we forward them to the customer. And then we create the load, then we send the invoice and we send it again. And then when the customer's missing something, we oftentimes send it a 3rd or 4th time.
Great.
Yeah. So that's why sometimes we have some people that will hold their trips until the end, which makes it rather difficult because the customers are trying to close out their loads in 24 hours, and we can't do anything until they send their loads
Right.
in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the other thing...
We've been doing that a long time.
We've been doing that a long time.
And I used to try to get away with just sending the invoice.
Yeah,
because you couldn't keep up with it. You know what I mean? It was a whole nother step.
Yeah. So the other thing you also do is you manage the office. So for those of you who come through Omaha, she's the one that gets your pop, right? She's the one that gets your laundry detergent. She's the one that gets your TDSs and your paper and your pens and things like that. You do it all. So
try.
It's pretty amazing.
I am the mom of LGT is what it feels like.
I think that's probably right.
Which explains a lot. I'm going to start wearing sweatpants to work because I'm the mom. Just
okay,
kidding.
For those of you who know me, no shorts, no sweats. That's my motto.
You can't complain about wearing jeans. Come on. Jeans and a sweatshirt, that's pretty nice.
It is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, people should not complain about that.
Yeah.
If they're complaining about that, then...
But when you came, I had to stop wearing my jammies to work.
I wouldn't have cared. Then I would have had to wear mine, though, and then that would not have been good.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about LGT?
Oh, God. I love the relationships I have. I love knowing the drivers. I mean, I know you now, right?
Yeah.
I know Pam's personality. I know her kids. You know Brian, and they become part of your family, and you care about them. You want to make sure everything's going well for them, and there's drivers that you develop relationships with, and it's always hard when you have new drivers because you're like, I think this is this driver when they come into my office. And, I used to know all of them. I used to know their truck number. And as we grow, I can't remember all of that. And it's not because I don't care. I just simply, something has to go, okay? Something has to give. And, but I do love developing relationships with the drivers. And it's wonderful to hear about the different things they see on the road and the pictures they send in. And, I've always been in Nebraska, but it's awesome to see all these different areas that I don't travel to, and the things you don't take into consideration when you're looking at this trip. The weather, the smells, the atmosphere of where they're delivering, the tight places that they go to, and I always find that very interesting. That's probably one thing I always like to know a little bit more about that, and it's very interesting. But it's a fun place to work. I mean, I like being busy, so I think that's why billing always satisfies me in a way. It might be a little ritual, but at the same time, it's busy work, and I'd rather be busy, because if I'm not busy, then I'm thinking about stuff I shouldn't be thinking about. So yeah, that's one thing I always love about LGT. I never have to come to work and go, what am I going to do today? I don't know if I've ever thought that, ever. Sometimes I think that at 3:50 and go, I think I'm going to run to the bathroom and get myself a glass of water. Oh, wait, 5 things just dropped in. Never mind. But you were talking earlier about learning other people's roles.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm just shocked, even as we grow, I feel more separated from my job of all the things I used to do. Like, I felt like I understood the aspect. I probably never did. But, you have owner-operators, you have company drivers, and you have to remember that just because you do your job doesn't mean somebody else doesn't do something with the stuff you've done after you're done.
We're all very interdependent.
Yes, and I think when you do learn each other's roles, not only do you become empathetic towards that, but you become much more knowledgeable, and you understand how important it is for your role to get done so that somebody else can do their role. That we're all on top of each other, as far as wanting to do the job. And I'm always surprised how many times I do something wrong that I didn't realize I was doing wrong and how it affects other people. But I had no idea because I don't see that aspect of it. So I think it's always good to have people cross-trained. And even in the billing department, I'm trying to train everybody to know how to do something that somebody else does in billing. Because once you do that, all of a sudden you become, I understand why we have to put that number there. Once you start looking for paperwork, and if you don't follow the protocol, all of a sudden it makes it difficult for somebody else. And so I think that's the area where I'm still always trying to learn a little bit more, because I think I can become better at that. Once you know what, you don't have to know how to do the job, but you have to know how it affects others.
It's hard as we get bigger, though.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Because I used to know the owner-operators, and when we had company, now I can't tell you that aspect of it. And they really miss out on the jokes.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, and to close our show, do you have a joke for us?
Oh my gosh, on the spot.
On the spot.
That's clean?
Yes. What are you going to leave us with today, Debbie?
Man, I'm unprepared.
I'll tell
I don't have one. Oh, please do.
Yeah. What do you call a cow that doesn't give milk? Don't say. It's a milk dud.
And that's the kind of jokes that every driver needs to get at least once a week. Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Driver Stories. To stay up to date with LGT, be sure to check out our website at lgttransport.com or connect with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on your favorite platform. We'll be back soon with more episodes, so stay tuned.